Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you guys who are new here, hi, my name is Bongi and thank you so much for tuning into this episode of True Crime with Bongi. On today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the most deranged serial killers in South Africa, and this man goes by the name of Sipho Thwala, but he was known as the PHOENIX Strangler or the Canefield Strangler. This man resembles BTK in some ways, but not exactly. But yeah, I want to call him, I want to say he's the South African version of BTK. So if you want to know more about this Sipho Thwala or this PHOENIX Strangler or South African version of BTK, please stay tuned. Yeah. Before I get into it, I just want to make my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody that I'm going to be talking about in this video and all the families that were and are affected by this case. This video is purely for educational purposes and all the information was gotten off the internet and simply compiled into one video. I just want to apologize to anybody that may find anything that I say in this video offensive. But now let's just get right into it. In February of 1997, a worker in the sugarcane fields just outside Durban called the police to inform them of the badly decomposed body that he had found. The body was found with its hands and feet tightly bound using torn strips of clothing. Although the police didn't know it yet at this point, this was the beginning of what would be a very long investigation into the murders and bodies that would be found in the sugarcane fields in Phoenix. Just 8.5 weeks after the discovery of the first body, a truck driver also discovered another body not so far from where the first body had been found. This victim, like the first one, had also been bound, gagged, and the body had been burnt. Over the next couple of months, more bodies would be found in the same location. One was found in May and 4 were found in June. This is when the police started seeing a pattern and started realizing that there could be a serial killer at large. Most of the victims had been bound and gagged, and some of them even had ligatures around their necks. Their bodies had also been burnt beyond recognition, and obviously this posed a huge problem to the investigation. The killer was not the one burning the bodies, but the cane field workers were the ones burning the bodies unintentionally. The field workers were burning the fields. I do not know for what reason, but they were burning the fields, and so in so doing they kind of destroyed the evidence in the crime scene, and they also burnt up the bodies that were already there. Despite the bodies being burnt though and the evidence being burnt, the police could obviously see a pattern. The distinctive way in which the killer had bound his victims and also strangled them gave the police the impression that they were dealing with what is known as an organized serial killer. So the difference between an organized and a disorganized serial killer is basically that organized serial killers are very careful. They plan out their actions and choose their victims very careful. Basically they're just careful. Whereas disorganized serial killers are very spontaneous. They kill in the moment just for the thrill of killing. They don't really plan anything. Their lack of planning makes them somewhat easier to catch. Whereas on the contrary, organized serial killers are very difficult to catch because they're careful enough not to leave any evidence at the scene. The cane fields in which the bodies were found in was also a very vast field, and there were like dirt roads in between the cane fields in which people would like sometimes take, and the cane fields were bordered by townships and suburbs and squatter camps, and each of these belonged to different racial groups. So it kind of made it difficult for the police to narrow down the profile of their serial killer to like one specific race because of the different racial groups surrounding the cane field. However, with the help of Dr. Miki Pistorius, they came to the conclusion that since most serial killers tend to attack people of their own race, and most of these victims were young black women, the serial killer was most likely a black male. They also assumed that in order to gain the trust of his victims, he was likely to be in the same age group. So they assumed that he was a black male between the ages of 25 and 30. So the investigation then centered on the black townships and squatter camps bordering the cane fields. The investigators also went back to old case files to see if they could find any unsolved murder cases that were similar to these ones, and they found 3 more murder cases that were identical to the cane fields murders, and so the numbers went up from 7 to 10. But not only was it difficult for them to put a name and a face to the serial killer, it was also difficult to put names and faces to the victims, because these victims had been burnt beyond recognition, and these victims were also from rural areas, so their families had probably never even, you know, reported them missing in the first place, and the families weren't coming to the police station to, you know, identify them or anything. So it was very difficult for the police to identify the victims as well. 2 weeks into the investigation, the police were finally able to identify one of the victims as Hlengiwe Mfeka, a young woman who had disappeared from her home in Phoenix on the 14th of April 1997. On the day of her disappearance, Hlengiwe had gone to the shops. When she came back, she was excited and told her family that a man had approached her and offered her a job at a hotel in Durban. She also told her family that the man was waiting for her outside with another female. Hlengiwe's older sister, Grace, was a little bit suspicious about this man. So she went outside and told the man that he basically looked very shabby for somebody who goes around offering people employment at high-end hotels in Durban. But the man assured her that he was employed. She was still feeling a little bit suspicious about him though. So once Hlengiwe was done getting ready, she decided to accompany them for a little while, you know, during their walk. They walked together with the man, and at some point the lady that was with the man took another route. Grace also had to go back home, so Hlengiwe was basically left alone with this man. When Grace got back home, her older sister told her to go after the two of them and come back with Hlengiwe. Grace ran after them, but unfortunately she was too late. The both of them had already disappeared and she couldn't find them. Unfortunately for the family, this would be the last time that anybody saw Hlengiwe alive. On the 12th of July 1997, the body of the 11th victim was found. This victim hadn't been burnt though, so thankfully the police could find some evidence on her body and on the crime scene. She was laying on her stomach with her face down, and her hands and feet were both tightly bound. It was obvious to the police that she had also been strangled. Her mouth had been stuffed with her underwear, as were the mouths of some of the other previous victims. The discovery of this victim made it easier for the police and Dr. Pistorius to draw up an even clearer profile of the killer. He was said to be a black male between the ages of 30 and 35. The way his victims were positioned suggested that he avoided intimacy in the form of eye contact, and the gag also suggested that he didn't want his victims to speak. He was also described as a sophisticated criminal, so this made the police know that he must have a criminal record for rape or murder or any other violent crime. Thanks to Hlengiwe Mfeka's sister, the police were also able to learn how he lured his victims in. His modus operandi was to lure local women into accompanying him through the sugarcane fields near Phoenix with the promise of employment in hotels or a hotel in Durban. Once they had walked deep enough into the sugarcane fields, he would attack them. He would bind them using their own clothes, rape them, strangle them, and even bludgeon them. The police didn't want the media to write about this serial killer as yet. Reason being, usually when the media starts giving these serial killers attention, these serial killers become arrogant. Instead of being scared and stopping, they will actually feel the thrill of having all these eyes on them and then continue killing, and sometimes they'll even kill even more than before, simply because of the media attention. However, during the 3rd week of the investigation, the story broke and the press dubbed this man the Phoenix Strangler, and some were calling him the Canefield Murderer. Although only 11 bodies had been found at this stage, the police suspected that there could be more bodies out there. So towards the end of July of 1997, the police headed over to the sugarcane fields with dogs that had been trained to sniff out cadavers, and they started searching the location, starting where the most recent victim had been found. On the first day of the search, only 2 bodies were found, but 5 more bodies were found on the 2nd day of the search, and all of these bodies were in very close proximity. The close proximity of the bodies suggested to the police that the killer would probably show his victims the dead bodies of his other victims before going on to kill them, so as to instill fear in them. He had also obviously gained more confidence and was now comfortable with revisiting the same crime scene over and over again. The bodies had now tallied up to 18, and all of these bodies had been found in the sugarcane fields near Phoenix. He was growing in confidence, but his growing confidence also made him a little bit sloppy. A cigarette butt was found at one of the crime scenes, and this was a big deal. This was one of the first pieces of evidence that the police had found on one of these crime scenes. It was major. This meant that the police could try and find a match with existing DNA samples from, past offenders, or they could keep it and run it against the suspect's DNA profile once a suspect had been found. After the discovery of the 7 bodies that were sniffed out by dogs, some police officers were sent out to stake out at the cane fields just in case the killer killed again. But in spite of this, in spite of the police being present at the sugarcane fields, the PHOENIX Strangler killed again. On the 5th of August 1997, Detective Inspector Bushi Singh was called to yet another murder scene in the cane fields. The body of a young woman had been found. She was half naked, she laid on her stomach with her face down, and she had also been bound, gagged, and raped. This young woman was unfortunately the serial killer's 19th victim. Underneath the body of this victim, Detective Inspector Singh found 2 used condoms containing semen, and this was yet another breakthrough for the police. Within the next 48 hours, forensic scientists were able to extract a DNA profile from the semen in the condoms. The police also went through numbers and numbers of old case files, trying to see if they could find a match to the DNA profile so that they could find a suspect, or at least put a name and face to the suspect. They came across an old 1994 case where the victim had also been attacked in a similar manner, but thankfully survived. They had taken blood samples from the suspect, and the DNA profile from the blood, the cigarette, and the semen all were a perfect match. The police could finally now put a name and a face to the suspect, to the PHOENIX Strangler, and this was, of course, Sipho Thwala. Sipho Thwala was born in 1968 in KwaMashu, which is a township 12 kilometers from Durban. His mother described him as an intelligent man who could read and write, and I think speak 3 languages, in spite of the fact that he never received schooling beyond 1st grade. He was also described by her as a normal and gentle child who often helped her around the house. He was described by Dr. Pistorius as intelligent and charming to women, yet extremely dangerous. Within days of discovering the PHOENIX Strangler's identity, the police were able to track down Sipho Thwala in his home in Bestas, which is a squatter camp overlooking the cane fields. On the 14th of August 1997, a large number of police officers headed over to Bestas to make an arrest. This large number included a SWAT team and a Zulu interpreter. While some police officers and members of the SWAT team approached Sipho Thwala's door, some of them had also spread out over the squatter camp, and others were surrounding the squatter camp in case Sipho tried to make an escape. Sipho was surprised when the police came to his door to arrest him, but he offered no resistance whatsoever. He simply handed himself over to the police. Inside of Sipho's home, many female garments were found, and some of these were souvenirs that he kept from his victims. And the police also found a backpack containing ligatures, suggesting that he would practice his bondage before actually finding his victims. A pair of trousers belonging to Sipho was also found, but these trousers had a victim's blood on them. Inside the interrogation room, Sipho confessed to murdering 19 women, although it is suspected that there could have been more. He also told the police that his hatred or anger towards women came from when his girlfriend told him that she had aborted his baby. Of the 19 women that he murdered, only 8 of them were identified. The rest were buried in unmarked graves. Their families probably don't even know that they died, or even worse, to the hands of the sadistic serial killer that is Sipho Thwala. Sipho Thwala was convicted of only 16 murders, 1 count of attempted murder, 3 counts of rape, and 7 counts of indecent assault. He was sentenced to 506 years in prison, a sentence which even his family members were happy about. He is currently serving his sentence at the PHOENIX prison in Pretoria. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video or found it informative, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos. And that's it. I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.